Hey, what's up, guys? It's Drew, and I'm back on the Money Is Show. And hey, man, I tell you, on this episode, I got a guy that I really, really like, and I want you to hear from as well, as we mesh very, very well in probably one of my favorite words in life, which is entrepreneurship, which many of you guys and ladies out there are entrepreneurs. And it's how do you actually go from an entrepreneur to a freaking business that's producing, and there's so many steps there. He's breaking it down for all entrepreneurs, and I want you guys to listen to us as we go through this today, and then I also want you to follow him. A lot of cool information that he pumps out content constantly for people just like you to help you grow your business. Look, a little background here. Jeff was a jazz musician, which is kind of crazy if you stop and think about it, but he was a professional, well, I didn't say professional, but maybe he was, we'll find out. But a jazz musician who was $500,000 in debt as a young maybe entrepreneur, starting off right there, and grew it to $50 million in sales in his online business. We're going to break down how he did it. We're going to talk about what you can do to follow his same path there, and how you get involved with his company at Entre Institute, which is literally an institute for entrepreneurs like you, which I totally support. I'm excited to bring him on the show for you. So without further introduction, Jeff, I'm glad you came on the show, man.
So glad to be here, man. It's been a great day. I'm excited to keep it going.
It's unique because we had the conversation earlier, like no one when they come on the show knows what the heck they're getting into when they get on the show. You kind of come on here thinking it's a regular podcast, and next thing you know, we're doing deals.
Yeah, it's been quite the journey today. And admittedly, my wife said, so what are you going up there for? I was like, I'm going to be on a show. She said, why are you flying to Salt Lake? Take a whole day just to be on a show? I'm like, I don't know, I kind of get the sense there might be a little more to it than that, and I was right.
Yeah, you were right, man. You had the entrepreneurial gut instinct on that one. Yeah. But look, I want to dive into some stuff with you, and I want to go pretty deep with you because your teaching philosophy is, I think, so critical, needed, and I want to dive into a lot of stuff here with you. Before I do that, give us a little background to the audience here about maybe what it was like growing up, Jeff, like from a kid standpoint, brothers, sisters, poor family, rich family, wealthy. Just give us a little background, high-level view. What was it like?
Yeah, so I actually grew up relatively wealthy, but I need to qualify that by saying that from day one, my parents were very intentional about saying, okay, this is the life you're going to live while you're under our roof, but we're not going to handicap you by extending this life beyond 18 years old or whenever you leave the nest, right? Like, we're going to force you to go out and have to do what we did, which was be self-made, starting, not starting from nothing, but starting with just a reason, mostly love. Yeah. So I always knew that it was like, it had an expiration, the affluence. Yeah. But what I got them much more than money or comfort, what I got from my parents was just seeing what good old-fashioned hard, smart work looked like, both hard and smart. My dad was a money manager who networked in with some of the wealthiest people in the country, and managed hundreds of millions and ultimately over $1 billion in wealth. But he's a scrappy, self-made guy. Didn't even finish his MBA. Struggled with dyslexia as a kid. My mom was an attorney. She was like fantastically smart. I think she was the second. Well, she got the highest score on the bar in the state of Texas history that's still never been beat 41 years later. Like, she was a very smart
number
woman.
one, or you said number two?
Number one. She was number two. She was the second female partner at one of the biggest law firms in the country, but she was best score in the history of the state of Texas on the bar.
It's still there.
Still, 41 years. She actually passed, and she was so humble. She passed last month, and I didn't even know.
No way.
And only after she passed did my dad actually say, so let me tell you who your mom was.
Holy cow.
She never said that.
That's like, you're talking like IQ genius level.
She was a very, very smart woman. Yeah.
Wow.
And so I grew up around intelligence, grit, and a lot of living demonstration of the compound effect. Like, they didn't strike oil. They built it 1 year, 1 decade at a time, and I got to see them rise up into real, I would say they were above upper middle class. They were like lower upper class. Multiple, probably, I don't know, whatever. It's not my point to speculate on their net worth, but they were successful. So I got to see all that, and then all of a sudden, I was 18, and it was like, okay, we've shown you what to do, now go execute. But by then, I had made a little bit of a, what seemed like a bungle at the time. I had one job when I was 16 years old for 3 weeks, got myself fired. In hindsight, it was very intentional self-sabotage. I yelled at a secretary, and that didn't fly, at a law firm. So I got fired, and I knew then, okay, I never can have a job I'm psychologically unemployable. And in my mind, it was like school is job training. School is preparation to get a job.
When you say school, you're talking about high school, that side, or college as well?
Well, it was high school at the time. And I wasn't too keen on college, but at the same time, I later came around on college. So anyway, so actually, not long after getting fired at 16, I went to school for one more semester of my junior year, and I was like, this is dumb. Like, I'm not learning. I feel like I'm being put inside of a structural box. And it's funny how this has bubbled up now with what I do. I've had a chip on my shoulder of education for the last 25 years, but I'm being put inside this structural box where I go to this building for 8 hours a day, and I might get 1 hour a day of actual learning.
Yeah.
And that's if it's not being watered down to the lowest common denominator of my classmates who are having to have like remedial explanation over and over to where like the smart kids can't even learn. Mm-hmm. And so I dropped out, and it's funny, when I dropped out, I actually withdrew because the school called my parents and said, Jeff hasn't been coming to school. Mm-hmm. And my parents said, well, where have you been going? We see you leave every day. And I was like, I actually have been at school. I've been going to the library. And I've been reading because if I'm going to be at school, I want to learn.
Wow.
And they actually kicked me out of school for taking learning into my own hands.
Yeah.
Well, they actually said, if Jeff comes back to campus, we're going to cite him for truancy. Like, that's a big incentive. And so my parents...
What state was this?
This was Texas.
Texas, okay.
Yeah, in Houston, Texas. And so I withdrew, and I told my parents, I said, look, and they said, we will support you dropping out of high school, but you are making a bed you're going to have to sleep in for the rest of your life, and here's what you can expect. They said, no high school diploma, here's the data, here's what your statistical probable outcome is. And I said, well, I'll find something else I can do. And I ended up becoming a professional piano player. So
right.
I went hardcore into piano, and this is really important in terms of later how I was able to do what I did, because what I did was, for 3 years, my parents actually bought a piano. They said, hey, if you're going to do this, we'll support you. Here's a piano, you can practice. And I practiced 8 to 10 hours a day, 7 days a week for almost 3 years before I was good enough to go get a gig.
Stop you there. I want to ask you a question. The piano thing, was it just something that you naturally liked, were drawn to? Where did it come from?
I knew that I had musical ability because I had played guitar in middle school, and I was a quick study. I was not a piano player, but it was actually a kind of a, objective decision to say, okay, of all the instruments I could focus on, like if I'm a guitarist, I'm going to have to haul gear around. I'll probably a lot of times need to have a band. Obviously drums and bass, like you're nothing without your band. So you're always having to divide up the money. Pianists, we get to keep all the money. So I can charge, $200 for a piano gig and actually get to keep the $200. Plus pianists tend to get more tips. It's easier to socialize while you're playing the piano. You can schmooze the audience. I can learn to sing. There's more opportunities. I can play more private parties. I looked at the economics of it and I said, okay, there's a lot of rich socialites, and they'll invite someone into their home to play a dinner party, and those are going to be the highest paying gigs, but they're not inviting guitar players in, they're inviting piano players in. Mm-hmm. So it was totally a financial decision to play piano. And again, it took me 3 years to get to a professional level. And at that point I had decided, you know what, I got time and I could benefit from instruction. So after about 2 years of being self-taught, I did go back to school, and I was able to, I actually auditioned, so I didn't have a high school degree.
Yeah, you say go back to school, you mean like a
college.
GED?
No, I mean college.
Okay, went to college.
So I go to college, and I don't have a high school diploma.
Okay.
And so I auditioned for the music program, and they're like, in nicer words, but basically they were like, you're not very good. And I said, well, I've only been playing for like a year. And they're like, you've been playing for a year? You can't come be a music major. You have to start when you're like 5 or 8 or something. And I was like, well, just, bear with me. I'm working really hard. And they were like, and then I was like, and also I don't have a high school diploma. And they're like, oh, that's a problem. So then I went to the bursar's office and I said, is there anyone in this school that could give me an exception without a high school diploma to get in? And they said the only department in the university that could let somebody in without a high school diploma would be the U of H Honors College, which is this little liberal arts program. So I went over there and I talked to them, and they're like, well, we have to have something exceptional to get in. And so I went home and I wrote a short story. And I brought it, and it was a short story all about a kid struggling existentially with his direction in life, and it was like semi-autobiographical. I took it in, and they were like, oh, this is great, okay. So they called the bursar's office. I got admitted to the university. Wow. But then I had to take general studies classes for 3 years. It took me 6 semesters of auditioning to get into the music school. So I'm playing 8-10 hours a day. Like there's 2 things I learned about myself. One, I'm like a dog with a bone. I will not let go. And the other is it's almost like an ergonomic thing. I got very comfortable teaching myself at a keyboard, which 10 years later, when I translated to the internet, same thing, man. Only it was 14 hours a day affiliate marketing and, took off like a rocket. So that, anyway, I was a musician all through my 20s. Early 20s, I started getting booked. And this was not because I was the best piano player, but it was because my suit fit properly. I got a haircut, I shaved, I didn't smell like cigarettes, I didn't smoke weed on the breaks. So I ended up getting in with these booking agencies in Houston that would book private parties for very, very wealthy people. And basically the criteria was you got to be able to play a little, and they have to feel super comfortable letting you into their home.
Right.
And so I started playing piano in these private homes of like billionaires. Guys people would know, Tillman Fertitta, who owns the Rockets, and he's on that show, Billion Dollar Buyer. Jim Crane, who owns the Astros. Charles Butt, who's the owner of H-E-B grocery stores. Who owns Bob McNair, who owned the Houston Texans. And so I'm in these homes, and I was like, suddenly because I thought my parents were successful, and they were, but like, you walk into a $25 million house and sit down at a $400,000 restored Bosendorfer piano to play for like 10 people at a dinner party.
They didn't even play it.
No, they don't play it. They have it just for dinner parties to invite guys like me. And by the way, those gigs paid 5 times more than my club gigs.
Right.
So I'd make like $1,000, $2,000 for 4 hours of work. And I'm like, who are these people? And how did they get so damn rich? And I started getting there. You always have to get there early to the gig to just kind of make sure you know where everything is. And I started bringing a notebook, and I would actually go up to the homeowners. It's like billionaires. I was a 24-year-old musician going up to Bob McNair and Tillman Fertitta going like, and because I was young, I could kind of get away with a little bit of like a rough edge. And I was like, how the hell did you get so rich? I would just ask him. And he would be, Bob McNair was like, he's like, well, you know who Ray Kroc is? The founder? Yeah. And he was like, yeah, well, he failed 11 times. I failed 19 times. And he told me his story of like 25 years of failure after failure after failure. And I'm taking notes. And as I'm interviewing, and it wasn't just billionaires, there were like 100 millionaires and CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. And I'm taking notes, and I start seeing these patterns. Like, oh, it's not, you don't have to be the smartest guy. They're all entrepreneurs. Yeah. It doesn't matter where you went to school. Some of them doesn't even matter if you went to school. I could do this. It's about perseverance, grit, and learning to like see value and opportunity in the market. And so I started trying to start businesses during the day, even while I was playing piano at night. I'm trying to accelerate through the story. It took me 41 years to live it, so a little bit to tell it. But by my late 20s, I had failed at 10 consecutive businesses. I had started a marketing company. I had tried a music booking agency. I had tried producing rave parties. I had invested a little bit of tip money in a sandwich shop. And I tried originating mortgages for Countrywide. Like, I was a disaster at all of it. I tried flipping houses on a credit card because I read Rich Dad Poor Dad and thought it seemed smart. And finally, late 20s, I had convinced a bank and a franchisor to give me about $400,000 worth of rope to hang myself with. These SBA guaranteed franchise loans to open these stores. I was way in over my head. I'd never been successful at anything, so I don't know why they gave me the loans. And then the Great Recession happened. So even though I was actually starting to build a little momentum, it all got ripped out from under me. I'm 29 years old. I'm $495,000 in debt. I have the United States Treasury coming after me because they were SBA loans. Mm-hmm. I have 4 years left on 2 5-year leases, so I have these big REITs coming after me, suing me. State of Texas, unemployment tax, payroll tax, IRS. It was just, And I'm like, what do I do? So I lose my apartment. My wife, I was married at the time, she's like, I'm out, you're crazy, you're too reckless, I can't build a life with you. And I'm like, well, okay, but I don't have a place to live, so can I at least come stay with your parents?
It's crazy.
And I go live with her parents, and she's living in her old childhood bedroom. I'm in the spare room, like,
my God, with an ex-wife and her family.
Oh, like ashamed, and I stopped bathing, I stopped shaving, and I
You
just,
go through like depression, really.
I was really depressed.
Yeah.
And I was about 40 pounds heavier than I am now. I looked like I had like bad skin because I never went outside. And frankly, I didn't bathe or even wash my face. But what I did do was I did what I knew I could do, which was learn a new skill at a keyboard. I had found an online marketing training course that taught affiliate marketing. And I was $495,000 in debt. I paid it off in 18 months. And so you got to picture, like, after a year, I emerged from the bedroom, and I'm not totally out of debt yet, but I'm making like 50, 60 grand a month, and my father-in-law probably makes 80 grand a year.
Yep.
And he's still talking down to me. And I'm like, I walk out and I'm like, okay, Mr., I don't say her name, but Mr. whatever. And the thing is, I had a lot of resentment because I had actually, one of the reasons I had gone back to college, but by my own choice, but I had stayed in to finish, because it got to a point where I was like, I'm a good enough musician. I'm out there, I'm learning more on the jobs than I am in school. But I stayed in school to finish school because he basically said, you can't be with my daughter if you don't finish school. Because he was a cookie cutter, mechanical engineer, purchasing manager at a valve actuator company or something. And I'm like,
God, I just fell asleep.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, 8x8 room with no windows for 20 years. And so finally I'm like, I did everything. And on top of it, I make more money in 2 months than you make in a year, and I'm gonna have us dug out of this mess in 6 more months, and you're still talking crap to me. Finally, I was just like, I can't do it. I'm out. I moved to New York. I kept marketing, and I can fast forward through the next 10 years, but long story short, I went from affiliate marketing, paid off that debt in 18 months, kept doing it for 5 years, did like $10 million in commissions. So I didn't have to even have a product or inventory or anything. Then I started a digital agency, did lead generation and online, reputation and, business footprint services for small businesses for the next 6 years. Did about $30 million in sales for that, got twice on the Inc. 5000. And then I sold that agency for, multiple 7 figures. And like, now I'm 39, and I look back over the last 10 years and I'm like, whoa.
Wow.
It was because I'd been going so hard. I hadn't really had time to stop and smell the roses. But that moment,
like, you don't even pick your head up, basically.
No.
You're just like driving through.
It was a decade. And I remember reading like Bill Gates, or it gets attributed to Bill Gates, but anyways, like a lot of people overestimate what they can do in a year, but they underestimate what they can do in a decade.
Yeah.
And I looked at the last decade of my life and I was like, yeah, it's true. Because if you had said to me, hey, spend $2,000 on this online training course and you'll make $50 million in the next 10 years, I would have said, I have a pretty high confidence in myself, but I'm not sure I would have bit that off. But sure enough, that's what a decade of grinding looks like. And so I became even more passionate and enrolled than I already was in the power of modern entrepreneurship. Not the kind of entrepreneurship I tried to do starting a brick and mortar franchise restaurant and get my ass kicked with $40,000 a month in overhead and selling $5 sandwiches. You got to sell 8,000 sandwiches. Your 20% margin, you're probably gonna sell 20,000 sandwiches a month or something crazy. Like that's old school. And I'm not saying that's terrible, but this new, modern, digitally driven, high leverage, lifestyle conducive entrepreneurship. I can move to New York. I spent 6 months on a mountain in Montana, like literally working on my laptop at the base camp and making more money than anybody I knew. I just became so passionate about that. And so when I had an opportunity to actually retire and live comfortably, I was like, entrepreneurship isn't something you do, it's someone you are. There was no way I was gonna stop. So I'm like, what can I do to make the second half of my life as much fun, but even more meaningful than the first half? And it was like, I gotta teach the world how I did this. And I started putting out content videos. And anyway, you only asked me about my childhood, and I've brought us all the way current, but that's how what I'm doing now emerged, is I just started teaching the world what I had done. It started as just free value, like a free value dump, and eventually it grew into a business.
Yeah, so it's good you went that way, because the second question is always, tell us what you do now.
Okay.
And you got us to that point, so we're good. We're cover those two things, how you grew up and then where you're at now. I want to dive into the topic of education with you.
Okay.
These are two passionate, or one passionate subject that we both share on education. I grew up with school teachers, and obviously you grew up with parents that were highly educated in that they valued the schools and so forth. But when you look back, like you're talking about when you're growing up in school and you dropped out, right? For me, I was kind of the same way, in the sense of like, school was just like a something I had to go do, right? It's like you have to go do this, and as an entrepreneur, it was the box that I did not fit in, nor did I even want to fit in. Like I didn't have a desire to fit into it. And the only thing I could figure out was like, okay, I need to accomplish this, this, and this, whatever the classes were. Like I just broke it down and said, oh, you want me to have this class, this? Like I have this to graduate high school. And then same thing when it came to college. Like I got to have these classes, graduate college, got it, check. I went to a process of a little bit different from yours where you're like dropped out. I went to the process of I can just pay someone to go do this. Like I could just pay someone to go to classes, especially when I got to college. I was like, I don't need to show up to class. I can just pay you guys to show up to class, sign me in, and I just figured out how to get around. Like it was just an obstacle I needed to get around to make other people happy, basically.
Yeah.
I got no value out of it as far as the education side. Maybe friendships and hangouts and stuff like that, but not as far as like education. And I just found a way to get around it. And I literally paid this. I hired this girl in college who literally, I've never said this before on like public. That just took my test for me and like did assignments I gave her. What do you get when you first get like a syllabus or something?
Syllabus, yeah.
Yeah, like here's my syllabus, and she would just go, hey, go turn this in, and that's literally how I got through. Because as an entrepreneur, my brain was like, I don't want this, and kind of got out of it because it didn't fit anything of what I was looking for. And you made a quote earlier when me and you were talking privately about there's almost this like entrepreneurship success pedigree that basically goes, to be a successful entrepreneur, go to college, drop out, make everybody know that you dropped out, and then go to start entrepreneurship, get kicked in the teeth 18 times, lose everything, and then you can be successful. Like that's almost like what entrepreneurs do.
Yeah, that's the classic entrepreneur journey.
Yeah. And what I love about you is you're trying to change that. Yeah. And people, I tell people, all the time about what's wrong with education, and I want to ask you that question, but you're like the only person that I've found that's like, no, here's how we can fix it though. Here's what we can do to fix it. So first, let's talk about what's wrong with our education system right now. And I don't, is it a better question what's wrong with education, or is it what's wrong with education with entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I mean, I think those are two different, somewhat overlapping questions.
Yeah.
I think there's plenty that's still wrong with education, even for non-entrepreneurs.
Let's stick on the entrepreneur side, because that's who we are.
But and here's the thing, I think you have to explain that in the modern world, there's this new trend emerging called intrapreneurship, which even says that in big companies, they want people that are entrepreneurial thinkers and focused on value innovation and finding market opportunity and creating from within rather than just being told from up top, hey, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
So I don't think you can say that, oh, well, that person's going to go get a job, so they don't need to be entrepreneurial. Everyone needs to be entrepreneurial. And and this is partly because of my experience, but admittedly, I haven't been in school. And I mean, I graduated 13, 14 years ago. But I have 4 kids, 2 teenagers. I know a lot of young people. I mentor a lot of young people. I coach the high school recreational basketball team. Like across the board, students report the same fairly miserable, uninspiring experience with school. And I think there's two problems, 3. I'll start with 3 problems. There's like 300 problems. But one is that school teaches you that if you check boxes, you can create a predictable result. That is not how the world works anymore.
Especially now. Maybe 100 years ago, not today.
Even 30 or 40 years ago. Like my parents, like one thing to their credit that they've always said is they said, we were a product of a time. My mom graduated, my mom got an MBA and a law degree, and obviously an undergrad, and her total bill for that was like less than 50 grand.
Wow.
My dad, got a undergrad and did 2/3 of an MBA and spent like 20 grand. Now, you're talking 150, 200 grand into that, and the expected, a Harvard graduate now, 10 years out of Harvard is expected to make $80,000 a year. That's for a $250,000 education.
That is insane.
Yeah, that's 10 years. It takes you close to 20 years of being out of Harvard to make 100 grand. I mean, have you tried living on 100 grand lately in a major U.S. city with a family?
Crazy, yeah.
That's fast for going to Harvard. So what is it if you went to, Poughkeepsie Community College? Like, I just think the whole economic of it is a disaster. And so they're teaching you that, if you check these boxes, you'll get this result, when actually the least likely way to get the result that most people want, which is comfort, affluence, the wealth to retire at an age where they're actually young enough to not be riddled with health problems and actually enjoy it, some free time, some freedom of choice, freedom of direction in life, like all of those things that people want, the least predictable way to get them is to check the boxes and go to school and get a job. But you'll never hear that because schools are run by people who checked the boxes and got a job. And none of them, I mean, I know that college professors at the graduate level now can maybe make 150 grand a year, but like none of them are rich. None of them have enough money to really speak with authority about what it takes to make a lot of money, and certainly what's required to manage and grow a lot of money. And those are the most important skills in the world. Like if there was, you know, people say, oh, it's not about money. It is about money.
Yep, 100% agree.
It's fucking about money. This is not called the Happiness Is show.
Right.
Because that comes later. You know, happiness is, and I'm not saying happiness is about a net worth. Happiness is about freedom. Happiness is about autonomy. Happiness is about being able to take care of the people you love. You can't take care of the people you love if you're struggling yourself. And so anyway, that's part of the problem in school. I think another problem in school is they just make it so unfun. It's just not fun.
Yeah.
Because, and I get it, maybe they have an operational challenge to deal with this many students that are at this many different levels of learning styles and skills and socioeconomic backgrounds, and not so much that, but like levels of family support. Some of them go home and their parents enforce 4 hours a night of doing homework. Some of them go home and they don't even have parents. And like, I get it, it's a big operational problem, but that doesn't change the reality that whatever they're doing to solve it isn't working. School is not fun. Every young person I talk to says they hate school. They don't even just say, yeah, it's okay, or I don't, they like literally their word is, I hate school. I don't see the point. You can't inspire someone, you can't grow and nurture someone in an environment where they're fighting you, they're antagonistic to you the whole time because you've made it miserable for them. So that's the second problem. And then the third problem is the intangibles that it actually takes to be successful in this world are systematically removed from school. So in school, there's not meant to be better and worse. There's not meant to be successful and unsuccessful. In school, there's not meant to be so hard that you might fail. It's all no child left behind. That's not actually how the world works. In the world, you will get left behind if you're not good enough.
Yep.
Period. And so they've removed all this, unfairness from the schools, and in so doing, they're creating students who have no idea what to do in an actual world that will kick their ass. And so most of you look at the archetype of the successful, academically prepared career person, they're 25 years old, they're 30 years old, they're 40 years old. Then they have a midlife crisis. Then they go to a Tony Robbins event. Then they realize they're never gonna be able to retire. Then they have an oh shit moment and they go online and they start buying my courses to go, hey, I'm 10 years from retirement and I have $72,000 in the bank, maybe. I'm screwed because I need to have about 2 to 5 million to actually retire comfortably in 10 or 12 years. Let me go learn how to generate additional income that my job never gave me and that school never taught me I'd need, right? And it's because, and the thing is, they go to Tony Robbins events because they've never been properly equipped psychologically and even neurologically to deal with the fact that life is really damn hard. And so when people come to Entre, I don't start with, here's how to market, here's how to make $50 a day on Instagram. I go, self-assess, man. You're soft. You don't keep a set schedule. You don't have good habits. You're not a good, effective communicator. You don't know how to balance like clarity with empathy. You lack all these soft, qualitative skills that are actually what you need to learn to be successful that they 100% neglect in school. So, anyways, that's 3 of the problems. If you want the other 297, I don't know how much time you have, but there's a lot.
Yeah, dude, there's a lot. And everything that you said is extremely true when it comes to school of I think about not being fun. And it's one thing when it wasn't fun in the late 80s and early 90s because we were a different country then.
Yeah.
Now you look at what kids have, how fast our society moves with internet, cell phones, everything else. And you think about how fun all those things are, right? How fun a freaking app game is that people will spend literally 20 hours a day on an app playing a game, and how that entertains their brain, and then take that away from them and set them in a classroom, making them memorize something that, just think about this. I started thinking about this a while back. because we could not do this when we were kids, but if we could have, our brain, I guarantee, would have said this as an entrepreneur. It's like when you're in a classroom and the teacher's wanting you to memorize these checklist of items, right? Like whatever it is. History dates. Let's go through 18, as you start memorizing history dates, right? Or let's memorize the periodic table.
Right.
Okay. And in our day and age, even when I was in school, I'm like, what the hell am I memorizing the periodic table for? Like, I don't care about the periodic table.
Right.
And I have no desire to do anything with science, period, in my life. And that's how we would justify it. But now, if we were in schools, like my brain would say, like, wait, why do I need to memorize? I can just type in my phone.
Yeah.
Like, why do I got to memorize this crap?
Right.
I would have to go memorize something that I can actually use to my advantage versus I can just memorize this. I can just Google it, right? And you think about it from a school standpoint, they're still trying to make you checklist off stuff that any kid that's an entrepreneur, like we were growing up as an entrepreneur, we didn't know what it was yet. It was almost frowned upon back then, much more than it is frowned upon now even. And I gotta think about what these kids like are in school thinking about that have the entrepreneurial spirit, that were born with this entrepreneurial side, and thinking, dude, I can't imagine what they're going through right now in classrooms. I hated it, but I couldn't Google it at least. But now, like, if I'm in class, I'm like, I already have the answer. It's just right here.
Right.
Why do I have to memorize this crap, right? And I think it's a big point that schools are missing right now.
It really is. And I think that even non-entrepreneurial kids, the internet has exposed everyone to images of freedom and creativity and lifestyle by design.
That applies to everybody, and I was going to the entrepreneur side because like on steroids.
Right.
All kids.
Everybody knows there's some 14-year-old kid out there making YouTube videos twice a week, making $7 million a year.
Opening boxes.
And they're like, and I got to sit here and sweat through this crap. And so, the problem is school has, that's the problem. And so what they're not doing is they're not adopting that sort of, they're not trying to recreate that experience.
They're not being innovative in any process whatsoever. They're not being innovative in how they teach and transfer truth, transfer knowledge, right? School is about transferring knowledge.
And it's about, learning how to use information to create value, to create innovation, to create efficiency, to create something that moves forward the market. They're just obsessed with you getting the information. And to your point, that's the least significant part of the process now because it's all on your phone.
Well, granted, if we go back when schools were started, right? My parents being in school teaching, and if you go back, several hundred years ago, say in America, information was what was valuable, I'll say, in the sense of if you had certain data points and knowledge, it was a very valuable source to you. But now, if me and you are sitting in this room together and we're just talking about information of what we have of schooling, if you will, again, no offense, I can Google it and you can Google it, and it's just almost at this point, it's like who has 4G and 5G?
Right.
Of who's going to get the answer first, right? There's no advantage point of just knowing a bunch of random facts anymore. Back in the day, I think there used to be. And to your point, school has never innovated to keep those children engaged and growing to be competitive. And I'll go back to another point you made. Then they killed the entrepreneurial drive or the competitiveness in kids. Like, what are you, freaking nuts? Like, life is about, you are going to get kicked straight in the shin and chopped in the throat when you're in business, and you want to take that away from children and then make them memorize stuff and then be no competitiveness whatsoever with it. Drives me freaking nuts.
Yeah, it's absurd. And the post-high school, the economics of post-high school education, this is what's so absurd, is it's built around placing a premium on the value of elite information in a world where there is no value because there is no premium on elite information. Like, you're going to Harvard because supposedly you're getting the best information from the smartest people. But I can go on YouTube and listen to Harvard professors give their lectures. I don't have to pay $250,000 to go there. And then the other thing is, you look at the way schools are structured, and this bugged me then, but I can only imagine if I had grown up seeing all this imagery of people living, carefree. The fact that there's a bell and you pack up your books and you have 6 minutes to get to point B, and you stand up and you move and the bell rings, and if you're like, oh, I'm not all the way at point B, I'm 100 feet away, I better run so I don't get a detention. There are prisons, factories, the military, and schools are the only places where a bell rings and drives a required human movement.
Interaction.
Yeah, and I get it. I have a YouTube video on my channel which is like the origin of Western education. It was to teach people to live in factories, and it was ultimately to, in fact, there's a whole backstory there. It's probably not worth going into, but it was actually the Protestants were terrified about all the Irish and Italian immigrants, and that Catholicism was going to water down society. So they actually, the federal school system was initially created via lobbying to protect Protestant values. And so the more you dig into the origins of education, it has nothing to do with creating fulfilled people.
Other issue, I agree. The other issue I see today, and I'm going to go a little bit maybe conspiracy side on this one with money, is us as a country, we, in my opinion, we the human, we are the asset inside of the country when it comes to our debt. We're the taxpayer. Therefore, the only way that debt is ever going to get paid is through taxpayers.
Right.
Therefore, if you understand assets, liabilities, and money, therefore we are the asset because we are the one that produces the taxes, which then pays the bill for our debt and our country here. And so inside of that, if you think about it, you look at when the federal government and this was another point to make here is, if you take away the human for a second and just look at, there was a study done that said, what is our number one asset in America? Okay, what is the number one asset that America has? And do you know what the answer came back as? I would figure it'd be like, Tesla, whatever. I had all these different ideas, right? You know what it was?
Who were they asking?
It was just a research that was done of what the number one asset was in America. You know what the answer was? Student debt.
Oh, geez.
Student debt.
Yeah, I
and
believe
their process was because you can't freaking get out of it.
Yeah.
You're getting it. All these kids are literally like you said, kind of shuttled, cattle shooted into this process to get massive student debt because this is your hope. And it's kind of presented to us in this way of this is the answer to your, you want to be rich? Oh, you got to go to school. You want to be rich? You got to go to school, right? Our families did it. Our parents did it and said, you got to go this way. And think about this, dude. In what world, show me another example that you would give an 18-year-old kid with zero experience, zero knowledge, zero decision-making abilities, zero income, a $100,000 loan.
Right.
It doesn't freaking happen.
Yeah.
You can't even get a house with that what you have right there, which is like the second probably easiest loan to get right now. But in our government, who controls student loans, right? When they passed that bill, I think it was in 2012, they passed the bill, if my memory serves right, that the student loans were controlled by the United States government.
Right.
The government owns the student loans that they produce, which when they give that money out like that, it's almost putting what I refer to as the golden handcuffs. On our
they're
citizens.
conscripted.
And it's forcing you to go down this path of, hey, we'll make this easy for you to get into, and you can be a hamster in this wheel that we need to go produce taxes and do what we need.
They shackle you and they give you no out.
No
you can't
out.
bankrupt out of it. So therefore,
you cannot get out
you're
of it.
forced to accept whatever they tell you is the secure option and forego whatever the opportunity might be. Yeah, and you're right. I mean, so the three biggest classes of debt in this country are mortgage debt first, student debt second, and consumer debt third. But you're right, student's the only one you can't get out of ever.
You can't get out of that thing, man. Like there's only certain things you cannot get out of in debt.
It's that and tax debt. Right?
Taxes you can't bankrupt out of,
right.
IRS stuff. In bankruptcy you cannot get out of student debt. Can't get out of it there. Another
like fraud.
Crazy, there's fraud side of it. But another crazy thing you cannot bankrupt on. You know you cannot bankrupt on. This is one of the most craziest things I've ever heard of.
No.
You cannot bankrupt on. HOA fees.
Really?
Yeah, you cannot bankrupt. You can bankrupt on an $11 million house, but the $3,000 or $1,000 HOA fee,
right.
You cannot bankrupt on that HOA bill. Cannot bankrupt on an HOA yearly assessment. Can't do it. And there's a whole other. I'll go later on the show. We could go into why I believe they won't let you bankrupt on that side of it because of what it does to our economy and keeping houses at certain levels and so forth.
Right.
But yeah, dude, you can't bankrupt on HOAs. So it's just crazy how school systems are built out. I want to move on for this for a second because I could jump on this.
Oh, I could be here all day for
all
this.
day long with you
so
till I'm blue in the face.
It's so fertile.
What I want to move on to is because of this belief that we have, because of this feelings that we have, you are the only guy that I currently know that said, okay, screw it. I disagree that I disagree. I think it's wrong. Mm-hmm. You're the only guy that I know that actually has an actual plan. I said to a lot of people in that chair that agree with us. Mm-hmm. You're the one that actually has a legitimate plan of how you could try your best to solve this problem, which is what you refer to as Entre Institute, which is combining institutional education and entrepreneurship together.
Yes.
Entre Institute, right? Tell me a little bit. I want to know about the 3 Ps. the kind of inside of it, and then and kind of why you birthed this thing because of the school system here.
Yeah, I mean, I'll answer the 3 P's second because they're part of how. But you know, Entre, again, it grew organically. September 2018, I sold my agency. You know, I wasn't like a gazillionaire, but I had enough money. I could have chilled for the next 40 years and been good, right? Could have put my kids through college, you know, whatever. And but I'm not just gonna do that. You know, it's like I spent 40 years finally learning something.
Yeah.
Finally.
Yeah.
You know, it was the 20 years after school where I really learned, and now I know something. I gotta teach. I gotta give this to the world. It's like I'm not gonna cure cancer. I'm not gonna. I mean, I could go serve soup at a homeless shelter and help 100 people, or I could teach this stuff and help 1 million people, right? So I start putting these videos out online, and it got so much traction and so much momentum for 2 reasons. One, I wasn't just telling people, here's how you build an online sales funnel, or here's how you write a high converting Facebook ad. I was telling people, here's how you can talk to your kids about business and about school to help them have a more effective learning experience. And I really started going at it from like taking my life as a totality and saying, I want to solve the whole problem, not just the I'm a grown up and I don't make enough money problem. And that really resonated with like families, and people started sharing it and like, oh, I talked to my kids about this, you know, this is so cool. And then the other thing was, I really, just from my own organic experience, I believe very firmly that, you know, knowing how to market, knowing how to sell, knowing even how to operate a business is not the key to wealth and happiness. The key is, you know, Jocko Willink is a guy I like, right? I'm sure you know Jocko, right? Discipline equals freedom. He says freedom through discipline. The more I reached a point in my life where I was what most people would consider kind of obsessive and rigid about my life, like I get up at the same time, I go to the gym at the same time, I spend the same time with my kids, I work at the same time, I still play my piano for an hour every day, and I do this, but it was engineered from the outset to say, okay, I have 168 hours in a week. Here's how I think I can structure it so that every week I'm creating a compound effect on these different parts of my life that I want to move forward. And they are the 3 Ps: physical, personal, and professional, in that order. Physical, because my body is literally the battery. It is the machine and the battery and the energy source of my life. If I don't take care of this, everything out there is going to be a mess. Personal, those are direct impact relationships. Myself, my family, my friends, my neighbor, my community, anybody that like I sit down with face to face, right? If I can't have impact like this, who the hell am I to think I deserve to go out in the market and make $1 million by impacting all these customers, right? I can't even take care of what's right in front of me, right? So physical, then personal, then professional, which is indirect impact. It's your, you know, how it's the value exchange that you have with the world, what you create, what you produce, and how the market receives it and exchanges for it, right? And the more I structurally design my 168 hours a week to check those boxes, not just that they were tended to, but they were improved upon week after week after week. And all of a sudden, my life started getting so good so fast. My family, my relationship with my kids, I had so much more time than I ever did just because I was more organized and efficient with it. And I had started that part of my journey in my mid-30s, and that was what I actually learned. It wasn't that I learned how to affiliate market, or I learned how to build an online value ladder, or, you know, code and upsell into a funnel. It was I learned how to live my life in a better way. And so that's what I actually started making videos around. Was not just like, hey, here's how to make some money online, but like, here's how to engineer and optimize your life and, you know, literally swap out the software in your brain to become a person who's so naturally obsessed with leverage and growth that you will reject anything that isn't high leverage, which will automatically make you want to learn how to do these things online. A lot of people struggle, they get online and like, technology's frustrating and I'm bad at computers. That's fine, but that's because you haven't swapped out your DNA to desire leverage so strongly that you'll fight through that frustration. When you desire leverage that badly, you will never sit there and go, Facebook is frustrating, because you'll know that even if it takes you 100 hours to get it, once you get it, you can make $1,000 in a weekend working 2 hours. And you'll want that because of what it makes possible in the rest of your life. I have time to go to the gym. I have time to take my family camping. And it was just a much more holistic and comprehensive conversation about entrepreneurship in the modern economy and really leveraging these tools out there. And dude, it just caught fire.
Yeah.
I was right place, right time, right message, and it was genuine, man. It was right out of my life experience. And within 9 months, I had and I was spending a little bit of money to boost these videos because I knew that it pretty quickly became obvious there was a business here, and I needed to start testing and getting some data about messaging and what was landing with people. So I started boosting some of the videos, but for peanuts, by about 9 months in, I had over 2 million people that were watching my videos and that I could retarget through Facebook.
Yeah.
And it was started on Facebook, and now I do a lot more actually on YouTube. But so then essentially I locked myself in a hotel room for a week and created a course to finally, fulfill the promise of all the teasing that I'd been doing. Say, okay, here is an actual structured course on how to do what I'm talking about. Started selling it in July of 2019. We probably sold 10,000 units by the end of that year. 2020, we sold 60,000 of those courses that have, now we've developed other courses and more expansive curriculum and brought in outside experts on different subjects and, things related to marketing, health, life, relationships, communication, not just making money. And this year, our goal is to enroll 250,000 students. And, I think that we've got the momentum and we've really invested a lot in infrastructure and operational, scalability to where I don't think it's a ridiculous statement for me to say a few years from now, we could be at the equivalent of Harvard University in terms of credibility, prestige, legitimacy. Only it's all entrepreneurship. And the difference between us and Harvard is people graduate from Harvard, 10 years from now, they're going to make 80 grand a year. People graduate from us, 10 years from now, they make whatever they want because our skills scale in the new economy.
That word leverage is like, there's few what I call keywords in life.
Yeah.
That are like, these are key, there's 172,000 words in the dictionary, American Dictionary. And a lot of them we don't even use, of course. And there's a few other keywords that will forever change your life, right?
Yeah.
And super important in life. And leverage, to me, is one of those. And actually, a lot of stuff that you teach, one of the words I think is a keyword in life that I struggled with was balance.
Yeah.
Super keyword in life, though. Like, you have to understand how balance works, and this kind of goes to me. When I think about it, I think about your personal side and your piece, like understanding how balance works with everything from your health, what you eat, how you eat, when you eat, what time you wake up. All that stuff is about understanding balance in life, right? So on those 3 Ps, when you talk about the entrepreneur side for a second here, one question I get asked a lot that I want to ask you about in entrepreneurship and you growing it is, do you feel like people are born as an entrepreneur, or do you think you can have not born with it? Or first, let's do a couple questions here. Number one would be, are people literally born as entrepreneur? Would be one. If you say that yes, people are born as entrepreneurs, okay, the group that's not born as entrepreneurs, can they become an entrepreneur? Would be my 2 questions here.
I don't think that being born, I'm gonna flip it and not say being born an entrepreneur. I'm gonna say being born a non-entrepreneur, or being a non-entrepreneur is like being a racist.
Okay.
I flipped it because I don't want to compare entrepreneurs to racists. I want to invert it, but it really wouldn't matter. My point being, some people are born with a predisposition toward black and white thinking.
Okay.
And I don't mean black and white. Mean
not
ethnically, racially,
culturally.
Whatever. Some people are just more binary in their thinking. And then if you implant on people like that at an early age these like ridiculous ideologies about skin color, they'll end up a racist. And it'll be really, really hard to ever change them. I mean, we all know the old racist who just like, you just don't even want to talk to him anymore because you're never going to change him.
Yeah.
That's how some people are about not being entrepreneurs. You're never going to change them. They had a relatively binary predisposition in their thoughts, and somewhere along the line it was implanted at an early enough age to stick that being an employee was the way to go, and entrepreneurship is recklessness and risk and screwing over your family and pissing away your money, and it's just gambling and it's crazy, and then you're never going to change those people. I'm not trying to change those people. But were they technically born that way? I think they were born with a predisposition. But could they have been intercepted at an early enough age and probably gone extreme the other way because they were already kind of binary in their wiring? Yeah, probably. But that's not everyone. Most people, it's not some hardened, indoctrinated, you'll pry my beliefs out of my cold dead hands. Most people, it's just ignorance. They've been in school, they went to school for 20 years or 15 years or whatever, and no one used the word leverage. Did you ever hear, outside of a physics class where they were talking about a fulcrum, Did you ever hear the
No,
word
dude.
leverage in school?
No way.
No. So is that their fault? Does that mean they, I think there's some people that I've seen them blossom, like open like a flower when you start giving them these ideas, and suddenly they've had this nagging suspicion all along that like they were in some simulation that didn't make sense, and all these people are chasing happiness, but none of them are happy. And there's this whole cultural ethos that just doesn't seem to produce what we all say we want out of life, but they've never been presented with an antidote to that, and suddenly you present it to them and they just flourish. So I've seen it go both ways. I don't think it's as simple as just yes or no.
Yeah, because I'm gonna go on my side. For me, I've always felt like I was just born with an entrepreneurial spirit inside of me, and to your point, like maybe something that has to do with how my parents pushed me and go build something, go create something, go outside. As a young kid, my dad just did unique things that were pushing me. One was communication, and how he had me communicate at a very, very young age. He knew communication skills were a lifelong skill that you have to have. In entrepreneurship, communication is key to everything, right? This show, we have no notes.
Right.
Like I don't have a list of questions up here I'm going through with you. It's just communicating. And there were certain things that were pushed to me but I've always felt like it was more feeding the brain that I was almost born with to a certain degree.
Right.
Like like from a young age, I started my quote unquote like first business when I was in 4th grade, and I had this idea at recess to go start a football league in 4th grade at our recess because we all played like at the same time, and I sold memberships to my 4th grade friends and had a draft and everything, and sold. If you pay me more money, you could be a coach of the 6 teams, and did all the and at recess I was running these like in 4th grade these different like on the same games played into a championship until they shut me down, and it, again immediately squashed all driving, and maybe they should have because I was selling tickets to it, but squashed all of it. Right, there was no feeding it; it was squashed. So it's always been a unique conversation I've always had. Are you born with it, or can you create it?
Yeah, I mean, some people probably are born with it. Or again, they're born with maybe a really strong predisposition where it just doesn't take much of a nudge. I think I'm probably one of those kids, and you probably were too.
Risk, that's another thing.
Like if you had gone your first 25 years of your life and never had anyone encourage you to be creative, to create value, to take a risk, and you'd had all this negative conditioning away from those things, you probably wouldn't be an entrepreneur. But you were probably wired that it would only take a tiny little suggestion to push you all the way there. And that's how I was. My parents, they were just a little more lenient. They would let me read Stephen King books when I was a kid, but a lot of the other kids' parents wouldn't. And I was an early reader, so I had these big Stephen King books when I was 7, 8 years old, maybe probably 10. I don't think they let me read when I was 7. But I don't remember if it was 4th or 5th grade, I would take my Stephen King's books to school and rent them out to kids for $1 a day because their parents wouldn't let them read it. Yeah. And then same thing, I got busted.
It's funny we got busted around your side. Let me ask you this question real quick. You're obviously good at building a brand. You exploded your brand from of what you've done so far. And sometimes people get confused when brand, like we teach a brand lab here, and there's a difference between influence and impact. And it's a lot of times when we say brand in today's society, we immediately think how many subscribers or followers do you have? Right. And that's how we gauge what a brand is. And I'm not saying there's not value in that definition, but there's also a thing called impact, meaning how much are you impacting one person versus you have a million viewers but nobody gives a crap. Right. Or I'd rather have one person that actually I'm impacting and changing. Impact versus influence. But with your brand, if I actually ask you a simple maybe bullet point concept here, if I ask you the question, how do you build a brand? I mean, obviously you've done it before, but what would you say of how do you build a brand?
First of all, stop worrying about numbers. Okay. I mean, the concept of a brand, comes from cattle ranching, right? Okay. You can brand one cow.
That's a good point.
You have a brand. Mm-hmm. You don't need a million cows. But that one cow is forever changed. Mm-hmm. Unmistakable. It bears your unique fingerprint, right? So you want to build a brand, figure out how to significantly impact one person such that they will talk about you when you're not in the room. Yep. And whatever they say, that's your brand.
That is so freaking good.
Like I could have a brand, if I'd never met anyone else in the world but you, and then I go home tonight and you're like, man, I had this guy on the show, it was so good, and this is what he stood for, and you could explain me to someone else, that's my brand.
Yeah. I always call to create a great brand, you've got to understand, create a feeling that customer has to have. And I dictate the feeling that in all if you go study brands, that's what Coca-Cola does, and they create a feeling that you think about them. When you think about this feeling, it's them.
Right.
And what you're saying is the exact same thing, is that when I leave, this presence, right? Let's say we don't even do business, it's not even about business. It's irrelevant. But when we separate, there's a feeling that you have about me, which is my brand, by the way, or it's what you say about me and how you communicate about me to others. That's that brand, and which is what you're talking about there, which is great brands know how to define what I want you to say about me when you leave, and everything in our path will push that feeling or emotion to make sure we create that so that our customer, our brand is through and through, all the way throughout.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it, feeling and emotion. You know, Mother Teresa said, and I wholeheartedly have experienced this, people will forget what you say, they'll forget what you did.
Yep.
They'll never forget how you made them feel.
Nope.
And so part of having a brand isn't, you don't get to tell people what your brand is. You don't even get to show people what your brand is.
I agree, yeah.
You have to make them feel what your brand is. Because the reality is, if all you did was tell them or show them, it doesn't matter what they would say about you when you're not in the room, they're not going to talk about you.
They won't even acknowledge it. Yeah,
the only thing that's going to
bring you
inspire
up.
them to talk about you later is if they felt something.
Yep.
And I see so many businesses online that are presenting their brand like it's some sort of a, clinical brochure. And it's like, no, you're not stirring anyone for anything. I get all worked up and I flail my hands around, and some people may love me or some people may hate me, but I'm really damn passionate about what I do.
Yeah.
And whatever the result is, it usually has some accompanying emotion. I think that's why I've gotten traction so fast. But honestly, it's not because I'm a good marketer. It's because I did probably 5,000 hours of therapy between the age of 26 and 30, I still go, to get over all of this baggage and crap that I was carrying my whole life that made me scared to really put myself out there. That's why I have a brand. It's not because of anything I know how to do. The knowing, what I know how to do is what people that are already interested in my brand come back to me for. They say, oh, well, what can you actually teach me?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
and and sorry, not to interrupt, but like, that's what Entre is so fanatical about, is it's deep personal work that equips you to build a business. It's not about your fucking technical skills, man.
Yeah.
Like, get over it. You could have learned that in school, and it wouldn't have done any more good for you then than it will do now.
I want to get this out because I don't forget, if to follow you, right? I mean, we were talking about your brand nonstop, and you're extremely passionate. For someone to follow you, what is your main social media that you partake in the most right now?
Yeah, I would invite someone to go to YouTube. I actually set out 2 years ago, and I didn't say this out loud at first, but I was like, you know what, I'm going to build a YouTube channel. Because I heard that stat about Harvard. And I was like, I'm going to build a YouTube channel. If somebody spent 4 years going through my whole YouTube channel, 10 years from now, they'd be more successful than a guy that spent $250,000 in 4 years to go through Harvard education.
Yeah.
And my YouTube channel is free.
Yeah.
I've got over 500 videos on there right now, and I actually believe if somebody went through every single one, they'd know everything they need to know to go be, just go crush it in this world. And I'll keep updating it, but certainly they'd know a lot more than they would graduating from Harvard. So that's where I encourage people to start. It's Jeff Lerner Official.
Jeff Lerner, your first last name?
Yeah.
Official.
Yeah.
Jeff Lerner Official.
And if you just search Jeff Lerner, I'm
Pop
the
up
first
as well.
search result.
Yeah, so on this concept, so I just want to get that off the table real quick for you. When you talk about building a brand and that feeling that you try to dictate to someone, if you talk about Entre Institute, what would you say that feeling is, or that emotion that you want to create? I mean, you're such a passionate person about what you believe in, which is Entrepreneur Institute and entrepreneurship, and then of course your brand, Entre Institute. What would that feeling be? Would you say?
I mean, we've really tried to capture it with our mission, vision, and values. Our vision statement that anchors, without which everything we do is absurd, basically, is we believe in a world where an awesome life is achievable for anyone committed to excellence. Now, notice I didn't even use the word entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Just be excellent, man. Be excellent, and understand we live in a world where there's average, and it's big, and there's excellent, and it's small.
Yeah.
And whatever you have to do to get into the excellent sliver, that's where the awesome life is. You can be an excellent doctor. You can be an excellent attorney. You can be an excellent entrepreneur. You can be an excellent, teacher. You can be an excellent trash compactor repairman. If you're excellent, you're in the, let's call it top 4%, right? I take the Pareto principle and I apply it to itself. the 20% of the 20%. It's roughly 4% is what I think is excellent in this world. Get in that sliver, you're golden. That's our vision. Now, I believe that the highest leverage and the most structurally efficient way inside of an actual human life that has to be lived to produce an environment and a set of habits that's going to develop excellence is entrepreneurship. So our mission statement, which only makes sense in light of the vision statement, is empowering people to achieve physical, personal, and professional excellence through entrepreneurial education. I think entrepreneurial education is the sandbox in which you can go build a castle of excellence, better than just about anything else. But I'm not going to discourage, if somebody's obsessed with excellence, I'm not going to say, oh, you need to come to Entre. If somebody's an entrepreneur, but they're not obsessed with excellence, I'm going to say you need to come to Entre. If somebody's trying to live a life of excellence, but they're feeling stymied in their professional path, I'm going to say you need to come to Entre, right? But it's about excellence first.
Yeah.
And then our values, things like, we eagerly do hard things well. We take daily disciplined action. We, move fast, learn fast, and grow fast. We're obsessed with improvement. Like, that's the feeling. Entrepreneurship, I think, is just sort of the logical application of that way of being in the world. And it has the most leverage and the most long-term upside.
Let me ask you this question here. This is something I struggle with as an entrepreneur. I struggled with for a while starting off, which was I kind of disagreed with and stayed away from almost like this mindset of entrepreneurship success. And to me, I was just like, hey, let me just go produce results. I don't need that bullcrap mindset side of it, if you will. And I mean, I straight up would bash people who was going to let me improve my mental mindset of
personal development.
Yeah, personal development.
Mindset.
Screw that shit. I'm just going to go freaking produce. Looking back on it, I think it was one of my biggest mistakes I ever made. Now that I've have this success, or when I actually started getting successful, was I actually focused on that piece of it.
Right.
And then pieces started falling in place. What's your viewpoint on the mental mindset, personal development side of entrepreneurship and success?
I mean, it's 90% of the battle, but it doesn't mean it needs to be 90% of the focus.
Oh, that is good, dude.
Because someone like you who's already got a producer's mindset, you don't need to spend 90% of your time working on your mindset. You're already a producer. Vast majority of the world are consumers. Look at our relationship with social media, where multiple times a day we're creating content, we're posting content, we're measuring content, we're analyzing it, we're monetizing it, versus how most people deal with social media, which is to suck it up like a fire hose laced with crack.
Yeah.
And you realize very quickly we are already in a different mindset.
Right.
So we don't go spend 9 out of 10 hours studying that.
Right.
But to the person who isn't, they might need to overcorrect. They might need to spend 11 out of every 10 hours studying it. But once you have it, it's the ultimate asset. So that's how I feel about it. It is really probably case by case. I mean, now in my experience, partly because of I'm online, I focused my business initially on adult education because adults have money and adults are pretty heavily motivated to go make more money. So that was the natural place for me to start selling online business curriculum. Ultimately, I want to teach kids. Well, that's a way bigger play for me, right? I'm already developing the curriculum, but it might take 5 years before I'm able to I want to go talk to Congress. I want to get into the schools. I want to really change the world from the bottom up, because kids, you want to reinvent society, get to the kids.
Yeah.
But I start with adults because I got to fund my business, right? For most adults that are discovering entrepreneurship, partly because they're drawn to the sex appeal of doing it online, and they're 20 or 30 years in the workforce, they need 90% mindset. Because they don't know, a lot of them are like, I don't know what to do if I'm not following an operations manual and I don't have a boss breathing down my neck, and I'm not going to get written up if I don't do the work. So, that's how it is.
Dude, that is a brilliant point. I wrote it down here. Mindset could be 90% of the formula, which I think it is. But it does not mean it has to be 90% of your time given to it. I think that is and
that's probably what you were annoyed about, was these people that are and I don't want to assume, but there is a class of people, they're so into developing the mindset of being an entrepreneur that they never actually go do the work of being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, maybe that's where my frustration was coming from. Is I maybe got around too many people that just wanted to talk about being an entrepreneurship, and what that would make them feel like if they were an entrepreneur.
Right.
And I was like, shut up, move, man. Let's just go freaking create some stuff, which is the natural instinct, like you said, all day to day. I mean, you literally brought a camera guy here with you to constantly create, information. And maybe it's just more of our DNA, if you will, wired kind of that way. But mindset to me is like super, super important. And I agree with you on the concept of I have a morning routine, I have a nightly routine. And I finally kind of figured out as you grow in business, your day life, what happens in my day, I have a schedule for, but it is a ebb and flow.
Sure.
And I gotta be ready to change, adjust, move, and so forth, right? And focus on what's really important. Even our interview today, like I moved the time slots of what we were doing as far as this interview, because I thought it was more important to make certain connections and introductions than just the show.
Because your leverage
Leverage is
radar,
like-
we detected,
Yeah.
there's a lot of leverage in allowing this relationship to nurture
it and develop
naturally
it
and
versus
take a
like,
day.
well, we have to do this show at 3 o'clock. We have to do this show, right? So inside of it, like as you develop and grow, that mindset piece of it to me is like so valuable. Of your 90% of your time does not have to be on it, and that schedule of I can always control my day, but I can't control my morning.
Yes.
Because I'm alone and I can control it. And I can control my night majority of the time. Night's not as efficient because sometimes I'm traveling or a family thing or Christmas or whatever it is. But my morning I control and my nightly routine I can control. And I try my best to do those two things and then have my schedule in my day and understand it's gonna change.
Yeah, one of the things we teach, I mean, to your point about schedule, yes, it's very important to be disciplined and structured, but you can err on the side of rigidity.
Yeah.
And that's a mistake. But one of the things that we teach in Entre, we live what we call the Entre way. And it's very simple. There's just 5 things you have to do every day. One is develop a morning routine. We're not going to tell you what it has to be. I have mine. You might have yours. If you want a place to start, go read Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. But come up with a morning routine, like you said, and get up early enough that you can control that time before you get interrupted. Do that. Then every day, we call them make your deposits. You make a deposit in an account and the account grows, right? Make a deposit every day in the physical account, the personal account, and the professional account of your life, something that should be bigger and better by the end of the day than the beginning of the day. And then the 5th step of the Entre Day. So it's morning routine, physical, personal, and professional deposits. And then every night, do your best to plan or at least set your priorities for the next day. This was one of the biggest takeaways. I actually got this from a book called The Mormon Way of Doing Business, which, I'm not a Mormon, but I have a lot of respect for what very many achieve. They have like vastly disproportionate number of upper level executives in Fortune 500 companies relative to the population, entrepreneurs, successful people. And one of the recurring themes in that book was taking the night before to plan your tomorrow. So that's the 5th element. And then once you at least set your priorities for the day, even today, I came up here no idea what to expect. We've spent most of the day together. There still are a few things that I knew were my priorities that I've either already gotten done or I'm going to get done before I go to sleep. But that wouldn't happen if I was totally only in the moment, making it up as I go. I kind of had to decide that the night before.
Yeah, I love it, dude. There's so much. I love, you can always tell you're a teacher as I get around teachers, being a teacher. You always tell teachers, because it's like, okay, there's 5 things inside this you have. There's 3 of these that you, because we're trying to break it down so that you can teach it, understand it, and apply it, right? Versus it just being a big theoretical conversation that you don't leave with actually what to go do. I love those 5 points you just gave, man. And your 3 Ps, physical, personal, and professional, just freaking brilliant because of what you can build off of that to help an entrepreneur. I mean, that is those 3 things. That is life, right? Because so many buckets fall underneath, sub-points underneath those 3, man. Super incredible stuff there. Give me a website. If they want to go to a website now, I know you get the YouTube, but what would be a website they could go to?
Go to millionairesecrets.com.
Millionairesecrets.com.
Yeah, for one, I paid a lot of money for the domain,
That's
so
the
I
domain, bro.
wanted to get some use. But also, it's got a hub that spokes out to my YouTube channel, my podcast and YouTube show, and also I have a free ebook they can download.
Download there as well. And that's millionairesecrets.com.
Yes, sir.
Can they get the shirt that you're wearing?
They can get this if you go to store.entrenation.com.
That is badass, dude.
Or if you buy any of my courses, this will be in the members area where you learn.
Just in case the camera can't pick it up, I'm gonna say it. It says successfully unemployed.
Yeah.
Which is so badass, dude.
Yeah.
I love that, man.
Thank you.
It goes totally against the grain and
it kind of catches. They're like, what?
Yeah.
It's like, sounds like an oxymoron at first until you think about it. Yeah.
It's awesome, man. Let me ask you our last question here. I'm sure we'll do some more stuff together, but I want to ask you about money is.
Yeah.
And I'm excited about your answer. You almost gave it to me earlier today when we were just brainstorming on business, and I stopped you. Coming, no. I want authentic. Like, I don't want to know what it is. I like to find out on the show with basically the whole audience here. And this is your sign here.
Oh, wonderful.
With Jeff Lerner. Money is blank. And of course, we do this because it's so much about entrepreneurship. Is you got to go deeper than just your frivolous, materialistic concepts of what money is and what business can do for you and entrepreneurship can solve for you. Because I'm sure as you teach or as you experience, you go 10 failures in a row. And it doesn't have to be that way, and that's what you're trying to solve. But whether you solve that or not, you're still going to have tough days. You're still going to come into office and get just absolutely blindsided by a project, whatever it is in business. And you got to know what that why is that's driving you, right? So I'm going to hand this to you. You fill this out right here, whatever, how many words it is. Don't tell me what it is. Fill it out first. Sign in between here, and then give it back to me. And let's have a conversation about it here.
Of course.
There you go.
All right. Okay.
Got it?
You want me to not show it to you?
Yeah, no. Hand this to me now. Don't show it to them, and then we'll reveal it all at one time. All right, bro. It's a great freaking answer. It's the first time anybody ever gave this answer.
Really?
Yeah, so it's a one of one right now. And when I was kind of trying to read upside down what you were saying, and I'll tell you what I thought you were going to say after I show it. I'm like, man, that's going to be a weird word if he says that one. This is actually a much better word. Here's what it is. Jeff Lerner says money is ammo. Money is ammo, Jeff Lerner. So first time I've had that.
Yeah.
And for those that,
and here I was worried that wasn't clever enough.
No, first time I ever had it, and I'm obviously intrigued because we own a gun store,
right?
And we have ammo. So, and I'll tell you what I thought you were going to say until I saw the second M. For some reason, my brain, when I was reading upside down, you said A-M. I thought you were going to say Amway. That's what went through my head.
Ooh.
Amway. I'm like, why is he going to put Amway right there?
That would be my cheeky little joke.
Yeah, I was like, maybe he's going to make a jab here. So money is ammo. What does that mean, ammo?
The reason I said ammo, and actually the first thing that came to my mind was money is no surrender.
That's a good one.
But then I was like, that's a little too esoteric. How can I say the same thing? The thing I love about ammo is it's equally useful for offense and defense.
Good.
You know, I own a gun.
Yeah.
I own a gun because if somebody breaks in my house, I want to be able to protect my family. Also, I mean, I don't plan to go out and use the gun. I mean, I guess I could say if I was hungry, I could go kill an animal with the gun. Like, it works both
Offense
ways.
and defense.
Yeah, and I just think that, you know, we were talking earlier about money is, you know, the lack of money is a lack of security and a lack of potential. Because you don't have the ability, the security is you can't defend yourself. You can't defend yourself from lawsuits. I mean, did you hear about how Peter Thiel, the billionaire, had to go pay for the legal defense for Hulk Hogan? You heard about that?
Peter Thiel, make sure I get my docs right here. Wasn't Peter Thiel, is he the founder of LinkedIn?
No, he was a co-founder of PayPal.
PayPal, yeah, that's what it was.
So Hulk Hogan had some, you know, ridiculous website that had like a sex tape or something that was...
Someone else put up on him.
Yeah, put up on him, and he was suing him to get it down, and he couldn't afford the lawsuit. And Peter
Yeah.
Thiel stepped in and paid for Hulk Hogan's lawsuit because he hated the company and what they were doing. But he made a comment. He's like, a single-digit millionaire in the United States cannot afford effective legal representation in federal court. Hulk Hogan needed somebody to pay his legal bill, and yet the average person's out there thinking they can defend themselves.
Right.
And so, you know, I think, and that's a more extreme example, but like, you know, look, we live in Utah, right? Prescription drug addiction capital of the country.
Yeah.
How many 16-year-old kids are needing to go to rehab from opioid addiction now?
Right.
And if I'm the parent or I'm the grandparent, you know, depending on my health insurance, I might have to drop $100,000 to save my kid's life.
Yeah.
That's not being a greedy capitalist. That's just taking care of my family. And I can't do that if I don't have probably a few $1 million in the bank without at least setting off my retirement. And for most people, they couldn't do it in the first place.
Yeah.
Most 55-year-olds, the average 55-year-old in this country has like maybe $100,000 to retire with. And if their grandkid gets addicted to pills, they have to make a decision to make. am I going to liquidate my entire possible retirement, which isn't even actually probably enough?
Yeah, it's like
or am I going to maybe let my teenager die? I don't think you should have to live like that. But
Yeah.
you're going to live like that unless you get as serious about making money as we are.
Mm-hmm.
And then on offense, obviously, we just went through COVID. There's all kinds of economic turbulence. Are you stressing right now, or are you seeing opportunity right now?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Which one are you? You're
Opportunity.
seeing opportunity
That's
because
easy.
you have liquid capital to go do stuff with, right?
Yeah.
Offense and defense.
That's so good, man, because all money, we talk about just money in general, money is literally offense and defense. You have to know, I talk a lot about know how to create money, keep money, and protect money. And the two answers are literally inside of yours. Creating it, offense, keeping protecting it, defense.
Yeah.
Like you have to understand that about money, or you will never actually be able to keep money or keep what you're making, because you don't understand how to offense and you don't understand defense of money. All wealthy people that I've ever met in my life understand how to create money, offensive, and then how to protect their money. Like they can literally tell you exactly how they do both of them.
Yeah, exactly.
When you sit down with a salt of the earth, wonderful, wonderful person, I use my own family, mom and dad for example, love them to death, but they're not on that side. They promote me to be on that side, but they couldn't tell you how to create money. They could not tell you how to go protect their money. All they knew was to stand in a factory line, I'll call it that, right, in the school system, and be to a certain degree a cog in a wheel until their wheel stops spinning, and then that's it.
And any teacher that went into school and tried to have the conversation we just had with the students would probably be fired.
Oh, yeah.
Because they would be hurting some of the kids' feelings whose parents didn't have money.
Yeah. We can't talk about feelings because that's going to blow up in a whole other episode of participation trophies that we should start passing out to people while we're here. And one last comment, I just want to give you a number here. When you should teach this, you said earlier about retirement, and you got to have like 2.5 million to retire and so forth.
Or more.
Yeah, or more.
Yeah.
And I'm on with you on one more. I just give you one little stat here. AARP, okay, which is obviously works with not elderly, but retired people that are going through retirement and so forth. They did a study. It was in 2018 of how much money the average person needed to have to retire. And they're not a financial company. Like they had no dog in this fight. It's like, I'm just telling you, as the AARP, who we work with retired people, here's what we have seen in our research. The answer they came back with was that the average person had to have $1.5 million to retire. Now, the key to this was not to live taking your kids to Disney World and your grandchildren, and it was not that. It was basically to live the average life until you die, basically.
Right.
You were they had the average age of humans right now, of men and women, the average age that people were retiring AARP, and how much money they needed, and it was 1.5 to stay afloat.
Right.
To just
bear in mind,
stay.
if little Johnny has a drug addiction, you're not helping little Johnny.
No, none of that. That was to stay.
Right.
And then you look at the average teacher, the average mechanical engineer. I don't care what you want to use here, right? The average person that works at a restaurant, the average person that works in IT, and then go ask them what they have in their retirement at 57 years old. And I work with this group of people all the time, and it's staggering.
It's usually less than 10% of what the
staggering.
AARP says they're going to need.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's scary. And my brain, because I get a little bit see behind the scenes, I think to myself, dude, how is this going to work? Like, you stop and think for a second, like, you see it all the time. Like, how is this actually going to like pencil out? At least the ones that we're working with are saying, hey, I need to fix this.
Yeah.
But that's a very small, again, go that 4%. What about the other freaking 96% of people that are like, they know it's there, they had the all shit moment, but they don't actually go even try to fix it? Dude, what happens? Like,
dude, I know. Yeah, I mean,
it gets scary if you
There's a reason I get so passionate about what I do,
Yeah.
because I feel like I'm fighting a battle for civilization.
Yeah, no, I understand.
That sounds like dramatic, but that's what I believe because of numbers. It's math. It doesn't lie. Math isn't dramatic.
Yeah, it's very Excel spreadsheeted out.
Yeah,
This is not going to pin out for you. It's not going to pin out.
Right.
I love it, man. Dude, great interview. I love hanging out with you. I love your energy. Passion's a word I would use to describe you. You have so much passion and energy about what you love, and you believe so much into Entre Institute and changing the civilization, which I anytime I ever interview a highly successful people, they can't stop talking about it. They can't stop the energy. They can't stop the passion. They don't turn it on and off. You've been the same person since you walked in my office at 10 a.m. till now. You're the exact same thing. You know what I mean? There's no on and off switch when you talk about that passion, and I love it, man. It's so authentic and real. Jeff, I love having the show. Again, make sure you guys follow him at Jeff Lerner Official. And we'll have you back on some of our webinars and other shows that we do, man. Appreciate having the show.